afternoon. It is Wednesday, June 26th. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's headlines. The Lebanese army pursues the remnants of Sheikh Ahmed al-Asir's fighting force, and cleanup crews clear the rubble of the three-day battle that engulfed Saida. At least 10 people injured in a stabbing attack when their vehicle was targeted by a group of unknown attackers in Burj Hammoud near Jisr al-Wati. And more than 100,000 people have been killed in Syria since the beginning of the country's uprising in March of 2011, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. As the Lebanese army pursues the remnants of Sheikh Ahmed al-Asir's fighting force, cleanup crews are going to work clearing the rubble of the three-day battle that engulfed the Saida suburb of Abra. The population of Abra breathed a sigh of relief as a tenacious calm returned to the neighborhood and a few shops outside the security zone reopened. Army tanks were pulled out of the streets after caretaker Interior Minister Marwan Sharbil determined the region had been secured, but residents were still barred from entering the areas of the Bilal bin Rabah Mosque complex, where Asir built his following and where he eventually made his last stand before fleeing. Army units continue to go door to door, searching for fugitives, including Asir himself, who is suspected to be hiding either in the nearby Ain al-Hilwa camp or in Syria. Army units discovered machine guns, explosives, and ammunition in several abandoned houses belonging to supporters of Asir. At least 10 people have been injured in a stabbing attack when their vehicle was targeted by a group of unknown attackers in eastern Beirut, according to a police source. 3 cars were intercepted, and a minibus carrying 25 Syrians in the Jisr al-Wati neighborhood. 8 men attacked the passengers with knives. Police surrounded the site of the incident, and a photographer at the scene saw blood on the seats of the minibus and on discarded T-shirts inside the vehicle. Some of the passengers who managed to get off the bus tried to defend themselves with attackers who were on the ground. The injured included Lebanese, Syrians, and Palestinians, and were taken to the nearby Mount Lebanon Hospital and St. Joseph Hospital for treatment. The attackers, who were in 2 four-wheel drive cars, pursued the bus after it departed the Burj Hammoud neighborhood and then managed to force it to stop near the flea market. Lebanese police are torturing vulnerable people being held in custody, including drug users, sex workers, and homosexuals, according to a new Human Rights Watch report. The rights group interviewed more than 50 people arrested in the past 5 years for suspected drug use, sex work, or homosexuality, most of whom reported various types of abuse and torture. Women, particularly those accused of prostitution, reported a range of sexual abuse, including rape. HRW says existing mechanisms intended to prevent such abuse were failing detainees, noting that in some prisons where cameras are installed, police officers would simply move detainees out of the camera's line of sight before beating them. HRW said donor countries that have invested money to equip and train Lebanon's security forces should ensure that their aid supports the development of internal oversight and accountability mechanisms. More than 100,000 people have been killed in Syria since the beginning of the country's uprising in March of 2011, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. The observatory said the toll now stands at 191,000 people, with at least over 36,000 civilians killed, including more than 3,000 women and more than 5,000 children under the age of 16. The group, which relies on a network of activists, doctors, and lawyers on the ground throughout Syria, said over 18,000 rebel fighters had been killed. The figures are a testament to the levels of violence racking the country, which has been ravaged by a civil war that began with peaceful demonstrations calling for regime change. The Syrian government responded with force to the demonstrations, starting a bloody spiral into violence that has left no part of the country untouched and raises concerns about regional destabilization. World headlines in brief. Well, UK Foreign Secretary William Hague labeled Syria as a pressing international crisis during a speech in the United States. He also described Syria as the most complicated crisis to emerge from the Arab revolutions, stressing that the situation cannot be ignored, for it poses a significant risk to the region and beyond. He added that there can only be a political solution in which a transitional government is agreed upon and a settlement bringing peace and rights for all Syrians. Turkey's bid for membership of the European Union has hit another stumbling block, with member states postponing a new round of talks for at least 4 months. The EU further criticized Turkey's crackdown on anti-government protests and delayed the talks on Tuesday, a day before they were originally due to start. Germany, backed by Austria and the Netherlands, blocked the planned talks, saying it would send the wrong signal so soon after police cracked down on protesters in Turkish cities. And Qatar's Minister of State for Interior Affairs, Sheikh Abdullah bin Nasser bin Khalifa Thani, will be the country's new prime minister. The expected appointment comes a day after Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani took over the reins of power from his 61-year-old father, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Thani, who ruled the country for 18 years. Sheikh Abdullah bin Nasser Al Thani will replace Sheikh Hamad bin Jassim, who also held the foreign minister's portfolio and was considered to be a driving force behind the Gulf state rise to global prominence. Coming up next, Linda Tamim interviews Mentor Arabia on the occasion of International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. Stay tuned for the exclusive. Today is the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, and on this occasion, our very own Linda Tamim interviews Mentor Arabia, a prominent international non-government organization working globally to prevent drug abuse. Over to you, Linda.
Thank you, Yumna. It is with great pleasure that we welcome Mentor Arabia Communication Director Ahmed Jaber in our studios. Ahmed, could you briefly tell us about your organization and what you guys do?
Yeah, Mentor Arabia is a regional NGO which advocates for drug prevention and awareness among Arab children and youth. We're based in Beirut, but we cater to 22 Arab countries. We're part of Mentor International, and we were founded in 2006.
Okay. Do we have any statistics that reveal the gravity of the drug problem in Lebanon and in the region?
Actually, we don't. Actually, that's one of the biggest obstacles.
That's surprising.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest obstacles we face in the Arab region, not just us, any other NGO that works in the field of drugs. We don't have official statistics and numbers and figures. We do have slight indicators here and there, but there's not one official study. I don't want to say not one official study, but there isn't like a proper number of studies, let's say, to do to implement a proper program based on those studies. The reasons for that is no proper funding, no proper research has been done before. Maybe some countries consider this as a taboo, so they haven't really ventured into it. So there's so many reasons for that.
Okay. Well, let's get to the main point now. Mentor Arabia has been launching a campaign for a week now for, the International Day Against Drug Abuse.
Yes.
And this campaign that you've launched has been on TV. You've launched it through social media as well. So this campaign focuses on prevention at an early age. Could you tell us why it is important to work with very young children?
It's very important, actually, and not a lot of people think about that. A lot of people think that only teenagers and young adults actually take drugs or experiment with drugs.
What age group are you targeting?
In this campaign, we're actually targeting kids as young as 8 years old. So the age bracket we're talking about is 8 to 12. So we're trying to target parents and educators and everybody in the education system, more or less, and the government, non-government as well, and try to tell them that kids as young as that age actually experiment with drugs. And it's that age that's the appropriate age to actually target them and talk to them, because at that age they start to, if you want, experiment with drugs. They start to know what a cigarette is, what a pill is, and that's when they actually start establishing their character. So if you grab them at that age, then you have a good chance of diverting them from the path of taking drugs or falling into the drug trap, more or less.
Okay. How do you train these young children actually to stay away from drugs?
We don't actually target the children themselves. It's actually we target the parents. So
is there a special program, to deal with?
We have so many programs targeting different age groups. For kids at that age, we actually target their parents. And we try to educate the parents and try to give them some hints and tips on how to deal with their children when it comes to drugs. So we try to tell them to focus on better communication skills with their kids, being nonviolent, being good role models, and all of that.
My question here is, do you have any education programs, maybe at schools? Do you train teachers? Do you train? Is there a special part of the curriculum that deals with this issue?
We're trying to introduce, if you want, a sort of a program that schools can actually introduce into their curriculum. We've been working on this for a while now. It's really important for schools to have something on drug education and awareness in their curriculum. It really helps out the kids, because it gives them the sort of facts that they need, the sort of healthy facts, if you want to call them, instead of getting those facts and experimenting with drugs through friends and through peer pressure and all of that. So it's really important for schools to actually have that sort of programs in their curriculum.
Are these actually books? Are these videos? What
combination?
What media do you use?
A combination of books and videos, presentations, people coming in and talking about life experiences they've had. It's a combination of stuff.
Well, because I know that teenagers are really rebellious, and so how do you actually get to them?
There are various ways. I mean, you need to target the right people that affect them, the influencers, as we like to call them. So one of those are parents. They're the #1 influencers in a kid's life. Other people are peers. So if you really educate peers, and those peers actually give a positive influence to their friends, then you're doing a good thing. So parents, peers, teachers, you name it.
Let's talk a bit more about the role of parents. Could you tell us how you think parents could prevent their children, from taking drugs, other than, perhaps not smoking in front of them, perhaps,
There's so many things. As you probably have seen in the ad that just ran right now on screen, there are several messages we focus on. One of them is being good role models. So as you said, being good role models basically is if you don't smoke in front of your kids, there's a very high chance your kids, when they grow up, they might become non-smokers. I mean, you could have that positive influence on them. Another thing is building proper communication channels, being non-violent, understanding their decisions, talking to them all the time, understanding what their character is. So there's a lot of give and take, but a lot of positive input into their lives, basically, more or less.
One major drug that people in Lebanon and in the Middle East take for granted is hookah. Some people call it shisha,
nargile.
Okay, and I've seen it's really prominent. I've seen many young people smoking hookah in front of their parents, and the parents seem to be totally fine with that.
Yes.
How do you address this issue?
It's a major issue. I don't want to call it a drug. I want to call it a substance, more or less. Shisha is part of the culture, as you know, in Lebanon and in the Arab countries. And there's a misconception among parents that smoking shisha is way harmless than cigarettes, because they think that smoking shisha is non-addictive. Well, if you smoke cigarettes, then you might be addicted to cigarettes. That's not really true, because there haven't been studies to show either or. But there have been studies to show that smoking shisha is way more harmful than smoking cigarettes. So it's not really a good idea to let your kids smoke shisha.
Okay, that was Mentor Arabia Communication Director Ahmed Jabir. Thank you for being with us. Now back to you, Yumna.
Thank you, Linda. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now let me remind you of our headlines. Lebanese army pursues the remnants of Sheikh Ahmed al-Asir's fighting force, and cleanup crews clear the rubble of the 3-day battle that engulfs Saida. At least 10 people are injured in a stabbing attack when their vehicle is targeted by a group of unknown attackers in Burj Hamoud, Nijas al-Wati. More than 100,000 people are killed in Syria since the beginning of the country's uprising in March 2011, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. That's all from us here today at Future Television in English. Make sure you tune in tomorrow at 4:20 for a very special on Saida, Syria, and more. From us in Beirut, have a good one.